Experience hospitality the Northwest way at the Everglades Hotel. Located on the banks of the River Foyle, the Everglades Hotel is just minutes from the centre of Derry, Londonderry, with free on-site guest car parking. Whether you're here for a family meal, a big celebration, or simply a peaceful retreat, will make your experience as memorable as the sights in the city. Visit Everglades Hotel Derry for accommodation bookings, the latest menus, live shows and events, and much, much more. See you there.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Gaelic Lives podcast. You're very welcome to our review show, and we're looking back at a few of the club championship games that took place over the weekend. There were a few that got up and running. Monaghan got up and running, Donegal got up and running, and Cavan also got underway over the weekend. So I'm glad to welcome on Damien Donohoe from We Are Cavan, and he's going to look back at all the Cavan stuff, and then we'll look at Donegal and Monaghan in a wee while. So Damien, good to get the club season up and running in Cavan.
Yeah, we're just saying, as GA followers, there's nothing like the club season. The intercounty is great and it keeps some people involved, but the club season gets everybody going. And this weekend, the senior championship starting in Cavan, there was great crowds about for the majority of the games. Even though there was intermediate and junior club championship going on, ladies club championship as well. But the crowds were really good. I suppose weather facilitated that, and people are just excited about the new rules and looking through the score lines. Like, there was no shortage of scores on offer, so the entertainment was high. And I think, look, at club championship, it's the best time of year for people like me. Anyway, I absolutely love them. So
I'm the exact same, Damien, and that's the good thing about this podcast is we'll cover all counties. So there's different structures. There's obviously different standout players and stuff. But I suppose just tell us the Calvin structure is a league format, isn't it? There's 12 senior teams.
yeah, that's it. 12 senior teams, all go into the hat for round one. You pick out random draw, and then the same on the Sunday night. So last night there was the draw for round two, and you do that for 4 rounds to develop a league table, which then you have your top 8 go through to the quarterfinals in a format that first plays 8th and second plays 7th and so on, and then your bottom teams go into a relegation playoff. So it's look at it. Some people don't like the structure, but the vast majority do like it, because it means if you win your first round game, okay, pressure's off a little bit. But if you lose your first round game, you're under a bit of pressure coming into the next 2 games, that you have to pick up points. If you happen to lose the first 2 games, you're not guaranteed to go through. 4 points doesn't guarantee you to get through to a quarterfinal in this system. So it gives lots of games, and then you get down to the knockout stages. So it's kind of like it's choppy waters before you get into the shark infested area, and that's kind of the best way to describe it, because it's you can't take your foot off the gas. You can't just guarantee that you're going to make through the quarterfinals. Such is the level of competitiveness in the Cavan Senior Championship, because while we have a big tree that people keep on talking about, those big three can be caught, as Ramsey United seen at the weekend, on any given weekend. So it's look at that's the structure, and it's a good. I like it personally. I think it gives us lots of games, and more often than not, we get the best team winning it.
Damien, what was the standout result from the opening round? You said there was a few big score lines put up, but what was the standout one?
Well, probably the one that was unexpected was Ramsey United drawing with Mullahoran. Ramsey United have gone unbeaten this year so far through the league. They got crowned Division 1 league champions, where they beat Cuhullins in a semi-final and then Crushlaw in the final, which was a really, really good game of football. But they ended up being pinned back in by Mullahoran last night, and realistically, Mullahoran, probably in terms of possession, were the better team. They had more chances. Cormac O'Reilly was in scintillating form. He finished with just totting up there 4, 6, 7, 1-7. A brilliant performance, and he was on no slouch. He was on Brian O'Connell, who is one of Cavan's very best man markers. So it was a cracking game. It came right down to the wire. Mullahoran probably will look back on it. They had 3 goal chances at the start of the second half that probably would have put Rammer out of sight. And then Rammer will look at it and say, despite being maybe the second best team in the second half, we had the opportunity to win the game at the end. Sean McAvoy put in a good performance in attack, but he was really well marshalled by the Mullahoran captain, Colin O'Reilly. And a lot of Mullahoran youngsters stood up. Luke Maguire, Oisin Maguire in defence. And then for me, the player that was really exciting was Connor Sharp at corner forward. I thought he was outstanding. Cormac Galligan. Again, these are lads that came through from a Mullahoran team that won, I think they won an under 17 minor championship. Or we chopped around with the grades there, went from 17s to 18s, but a lot of these young players are starting to come through now. And Mullahoran will be disappointed, I think, that they only got the draw when their performance probably deserved the win on the evening. But that was the standout result of the weekend in terms of maybe a shock, a bit of an upset. Probably the game of the weekend, though, I think it was Kingscourt against Cavan Gaels on Friday night. It finished 19 points to 20 in favour of Kingscourt, and it had world of drama. It had 7 2-pointers. There was a bit of a wind in Breffni on Friday night. Kingscourt playing with it in the first half. Michael Gargan hit 2 3-pointers. Kieran Dermody hit a 2-pointer. And in the second half, then Porrick Sexton, Ben Tully, Joshua Shehu, and Paul Graham all hit 2-pointers for Cavan Gaels. But for me, the standout performer was Emmanuel Shehu for Cavan Gaels. In fairness, all 3 of the Shehus played well. Favour Shehu come off the bench and immediately had an impact. He won a number of frees and may have been harshly done by for an overcarry just before halftime. You know yourself, Sean, when there's a 1-point game, every single decision is a big decision, and he was called for overcarrying just as he was kicking the ball over the bar just before halftime. But he had a real big impact, and Joshua Shehu showed real quality. He finished with 4 points in his championship debut. They call him Mini around here, but there was nothing mini about his performance. It was a big performance from a young lad. But it came down to probably the final moments of the game. But before that, Porrick Faulkner put in a high tackle on Evan McIntyre coming out. And this was probably the key moment in the game. And Cavan Gaels maybe were looking for more than a yellow card. The Cavan Gaels centre half forward came in and then pushed Porrick Faulkner to the ground. So the referee decided it was 2 yellows he was dishing out. The Cavan Gaels manager, Declan McCoy, wasn't happy with the decision and had a word with the referee and then walked away. So the referee turned the Cavan Gaels free into a Kingscourt 20-metre free and gave a yellow card to Declan McCoy. So look, there was a lot of key moments in the game, but it was a cracking game. Cian Shackleton was another player that stood out for Kingscourt Stars. Again, another young player. Like Kingscourt have a few young players coming in. His younger brother Aaron at centre half back looked like a real bit of hardy stuff. He's a physical player, but it was an excellent performance. I thought by Cian Shackleton up front. But yeah, probably I don't know that Kingscourt deserved the win. It came down to the smallest of margins. I don't know that Cavan Gaels deserved the win either, but it was a really good game, I have to say, over the weekend.
And obviously, Damien, the defending champions got their title defence up and running with a 15-point win. I think it was 5-17 to 17 points.
Yeah, and Crushlaw came out of the traps at an outrageous pace. I suppose the extra couple of games would have made a big difference for Crushlaw, but they had Dar McVeety back in close to goal. They had Paddy Lynch playing as one of the front 3 at times and sometimes out at centre half forward. And then the likes of their half-back line of Kieran Smith, Brandon Boylan and Matthew Costello. Between Boylan and Costello, they hit 2-2 from the half-back line. They added in scores from the middle of the field and Peter Smith and Emmett Boylan as well. They just had threats coming from everywhere, and their pace, their direct style in how they want to play the game was really impressive. They were they hit 5 goals in the first half. So in reality, the game was over by half time. Castleran came back out and second half put in a good performance. Actually won the second half, but it just, the game was over at that stage. Young lad to watch out for, done really well, was Jamie Clark from Castleran. He had a very good championship debut. Jamie Riley was another championship debut there. But for Crushala, they looked like a composed team, knew what they were about. They stepped up. They done something different than they had been doing throughout the league, which wasn't a big surprise, because in the league they weren't doing really well on opposition kickouts. They were going man for man, but they stepped up with a big zonal press and got a really good return. They brought off the bench James Smith, who had been injured, and Conor Rehal, who had been injured. So one ex-county player and one current county player. So they were probably at full strength by the end of the game, and looked, probably for my reckoning, they looked like championship favourites from the opening weekend. But a very, very solid performance by them.
They got 5 goals, Damien, but Ballyhaise went one better. They got 6. They beat Lara United 6-19-10.
And this was probably the most one-sided game of the weekend. This game was over very, very early, and Ballyhaise, unbelievably, in scoring 6-19, they hit no 2-pointers, and they only actually had 1-3 from dead balls. Everything else was from open play. It was a scintillating performance. Killian Brady inside finished with 6 points. Porrick Moore finished with 4. Brian O'Rourke took the freeze on the left foot. Big ball winner in the middle of the field. Had a really good game. Michael Brady comes in for special mention. 3 goals and a point. And all of this comes on the back of people wondering where Ballyhaise would be without Kevin Tierney, without David Brady. But Ballyhaise have probably shown there at the weekend that they're right there to compete with the best in senior championship. They beat Gown in last year's group stages and then lost out in the quarter final. But Ballyhaise are right there, ready to push on. Young lad making his debut, looked dangerous, looked exciting. Sean O'Teven. They didn't start with former county panelist Owen Clark, and then Evan Crow looked like he picked up a bit of a knock. Now he looked like he had recovered, but the management decided, Gerard O'Kane, who former Derry player is managing him this year, decided it was best to just take him off. The game was probably over, and that was in the first half. So out of caution, they took him off to make sure he was okay, and brought on Owen Clark. So they weren't really at full tilt, and still had way too much for a Lara side that has just been decimated over the year. They're nearly unrecognisable as a team. But again, they look like they're going to struggle, Lara, to stay in senior with performances like that.
The other 2 results then, Damien, Arva probably being the story of the Ulster the last couple of years, obviously going from junior to intermediate, now up competing at senior level. And Guyna got an opening day win as well, so 2 big victories there too.
Yeah, I suppose to start with the Arva one, that's Arva's first senior championship win. I have to look back on the dates, but you're talking either the late 80s or early 90s, so it's a long time coming. And they were really on top. They were the better team for the vast majority of this game. Killigary looked, I don't know, they looked disjointed. They didn't look like they were their normal selves up front. And at the back, they were very exposed. In the middle of the field, they were dominated. Cian Riley came on and settled them a good bit. But they're going to need Cian Riley to come back. The big talking point in this one, I suppose, was the red card to Kieran Brady, the Cavan senior captain. There was a ball coming out from defence, and former Cavan player Martin Riley was going for the ball. The 2 lads kind of went full-blooded for it. Martin got there first, and Kieran had already committed to getting there. The referee deemed it a red card. I've been yo-yoing over and back. My gut instinct is it was a bit reckless by Kieran, and probably a deserved red card. Having said that, with the momentum that was coming into it, there was no malice in it. I think I'm certain he just had eyes on the ball, but when he didn't get the ball, he ended up doing a lot of damage to poor Martin Riley. So we wish him the best of luck. He has to get a little bit of work done to rectify that. So, but all in all, Arva were the better team. Standout debut came to Jack Dobson. He scored 3 points at corner forward, was an option on kickouts, an awful lot. Big young player, one of those players that you kind of look at and wonder how he didn't play any underage county football. First game at senior championship level, and he really stood out. Tristan Noah Hoffman finished with 7 points. Cian Keeney on the other side for Killigarry finished with 6 point total. He had a 2-pointer, 1 from free and 3 from open play. And Oisin Brady had 3 points, but I'd have to say Oisin Brady was quiet by his standards. So Killigarry will need Dara Lovett back. They'll need, I'd say Martin Riley could be missing now for a while. And they're going to need Cian Riley to start in order for them to improve. But a really good win for Arva. They deserved it. They were the better team on the day. And then Gowna, as you mentioned, this was a strange game because the scoreline shows it as a very comfortable win for Gowna. But the difference between the sides was simply Gowna had really, really good finishers and were able to take more of the chances that they created. And they were quite lethal up front, in fairness to Gowna. They were with Oisin Pearson, Cian Madden, Dara Madden, all in good form up front. They looked a really comfortable side. In the middle of the field, they had a bit of a change in Conor Casey coming out there, which was unique. They lost Ryan Brady through injury, and they also lost Oisin Pearson through injury. So Conor Madden was in really good form, particularly in the second half. He had 2 2-pointers and 3 from open play, along with a 45. But for Balagna, just getting those chances and taking those chances, the standout figure for me on this one was that Balagna had 4 frees missed over the game. That were quite scoreable, that you'd expect them to score. And they battled right to the end, but they got 2 late goals from Ryan Connolly that made the scoreline look a little bit better. They created lots of chances. They just didn't have the efficiency up front. But Gowna will be happy with it. No Conor Brady on the starting team. No Ryan Donohoe on the starting team. So there's still no Ryan McGahern, their long-time captain. So there's still a lot of improving to come from Gowna yet.
Damien, just before I let you go, I'll ask you the difficult question: who's going to win the Cavan Championship this year?
Given the first weekend, I'd have to say Crushlaw. I think Crushlaw looked really well organised. They adjusted their kick-out strategies. They knew what they were doing defensively. Their attacking play, to me, was the most impressive of all the teams this weekend. I thought they were exceptionally good. But look, you could throw 3 darts at the wall, and I do think it'll come from Ramor, Crushlaw, and Gowna. But I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody making a county final coming in there. Mullahoran will be delighted with that, and Mullahoran with a little bit of confidence and youth and energy are a dangerous prospect all the time. Kingskurt, Cavan Gales there, they all could look at a county final, in their sights. But for me, I think Crushlaw probably are the front runners after the weekend.
Damien, great stuff, good bond, great to hear from you as always. You've been a good friend of the podcast this year, and no doubt you'll be on again when we come to the business end of the Cavan Championship. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear a word from our sponsors, Hastings Hotels, and then we'll be back with Niall Gartlin, and me and him is going to look at the Donegal and Monaghan opening round fixture. So, Damien, great to hear from you, and thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks a million, Sean. My pleasure.
Experience hospitality the Northwest way at the Everglades Hotel. Located on the banks of the River Foyle, the Everglades Hotel is just minutes from the centre of Derry, Londonderry, with free on-site guest car parking. Whether you're here for a family meal, a big celebration, or simply a peaceful retreat, we'll make your experience as memorable as the sights in the city. Visit Everglades Hotel Derry for accommodation bookings, the latest menus, live shows and events, and much, much more. See you there.
So now we're looking back at the opening weekend of the Donegal Championship, and I suppose just what were the standout results? There was a couple of big results in Donegal.
Yeah, Sean, there were 2 major talking points coming out of the weekend, and they're probably both connected to each other. Defending champions St. Eunan's were defeated by Kilcar, and Neve Connell, who've obviously won Multiple championships, lost against Swilly, and I suppose that's, without meaning to be disrespectful, like Kilcar and Swilly, it's probably not coincidence that so many county lads were unavailable right across the spectrum. For the first round of the club championships in Donegal, a lot of lads who play for Donegal are taking a well earned break at the minute after a long season with the county. None of St Union's 5 county players were in action against Kilcar. Though in saying that, Paddy McGrady he was playing for Kilcar, and he was probably the star man. Took quite a few points. Ray McHugh wasn't available, and that wasn't because he was away, it was because he was nursing a bit of a shoulder injury. So that was a big win for Kilcar, and then obviously for a young and Swilly team to get the better of Neve Connell is very encouraging for the manager, Gary McDade. I know Neve Connell are obviously missing quite a lot of lads, but at the same time, it's a great way for Swilly to get the championship up and running. It's the same similar sort of story elsewhere. Sean McCool's were missing Oisin Gallen. They got the better of St Michael's here without Michael Langan, so I suppose that cancelled each other out in a way. But um, I suppose these lads probably are hedging their bets. They're probably thinking, well, it's a group stage format. We might lose in our first day out, but we'll get back in the wagon, and invariably we'll still make a knockout round. So I doubt the likes of St Helens and Neve Connell will be panicking too much. I suppose elsewhere, Darrow Boyle and Ward McFadden Ferry weren't available for Guido, but they got the better of Glen Finn. Or Dara got a very good result to beat Ballyshannon by a couple of points. Kerman recently won the Division 1 title in Donegal, but they were defeated by Killybegs, so that was a really encouraging result for Killybegs. Four Masters, obviously a common team in Donegal, they got the better of their neighbours St Laws. Last senior game, Dunlow beat Downlands by two. It was a good game, 2-12 to 0-17. There was a game that had plenty of talking points. They're saying lost, yellow cards, black cards, but in terms of the football that was played, it was excellent. So good win for Dunlow, and Downlands can take the heart from the performance. And at intermediate level, there was ones for Neve Muir, Red Hughes, Neve Columba, Buff and Mark, and junior level, the tournament favourites, Carndona, had a tough enough game, but they came through it. So that's the lay of the land in Donegal at the minute anyway, Sean. And I'm sure I pronounced some of those names wrong, but hopefully you forgive me.
Who's that? The fact that a lot of them teams didn't have their full squads available now, that it leaves it very hard to call. Is Glen Swilly going to be title contenders? Because they've beaten Neve Connell, or it's gonna leave it very hard once it comes to the knockout. You'd imagine Neve Connell and St Unions are still the two teams to beat later on in the championship.
Oh, you would. Well, these group stages, the championships are invariably a slow burner. And with Damien Donohoe on talking to Cavan earlier, and it was very evident in Gowna's runs in recent years, and only didn't win the championship last year, but they won the two before that, and they tend to just stutter through the group stages before it's floating into life, So I'd say leave Connell and St Eunice. They know all about winning championships, so they obviously believe that they can afford to slip up in the first round, and that they'll still be there at the business end, I'm sure.
It's a long time to catch up, and there's plenty of football to be played, and it's the same in Monaghan. And I know we're talking about Donegal club players. I was at Cardiff and Clontibbert on Sunday evening, and Jason McGee was playing midfield for Cardiff, and I have to say he was well marshalled. Francis Hughes from Clontibbert done a really good job on him, just sort of spoiled him on the kickouts. And this was a fun enough game. There was no score for the opening 10 minutes, and Cardiff eventually raised the white flag. Both teams I don't know if it was a bit of shadow boxing early on, or just the both kicked a few wides, dropped a few short, but eventually Cardiff opened the scoring, and suddenly within a 2 minute spell, Clontibbert hit 3 goals. The first one came, it was Darren McDonald, a long kick out to his brother Dean McDonald, and he won it and beat a few defenders and stuck the ball in the net. Killing Lavelle then, he had number 3 in his back. He was playing more in the half back line though. He got a goal just straight from the kick out, and then Brian McGuigan got the third. So suddenly from a point down, they were 8 points up, and Conor McManus hit 2 point frees as well. So this game, it looked to be run away at half time. Clontibbert were winning 3-9 to 0-4 at half time, and it just felt the game was over. Now Cardiff did come back into it in the second half. They got 3 goals of their own. Sean Burns, he hit a penalty. Michael Connolly got a goal, and so did Jordan McGarrell. But every time they would score a goal, it just didn't give them the lift that it really needed to. Clonhibbert were always 6, 7, 8 points ahead, so they were fit to see it out. And of course, Clonhibbert, beaten finalists last year, they take on Scottstown in the next round, so that's going to be next Saturday evening, and that's one of the big games. Scottstown weren't out this weekend; they had a bye in terms of the group stages, so it'll be interesting to see how the 2 teams get on. This is Group 1, and Trua also won in Group 1. They beat Clonhibbert, they beat Cremartin 320 to 312. Stephen Mooney had a goal for Cremartin in the first half. I'm not seeing the teams level at half time. It was 1-7 to 0-10, but Trua come out in the second half. They got 3 goals of their own. Luke McKenna, Ryan Mohan, and Kevin Nolan all hit the net, while for Cremartin, it was Stephen Mooney got a second goal in the second half, but it just wasn't enough for them to really close the gap. In Group 2 then, Inniskeen had a big win over Bali Bay. It was 317 to 112. Andrew Woods, Sean Jones and Connor Jones all hit the net, and they all finished on 1-4 apiece, while Thomas Kerr, he hit 1-6 for Bali Bay of their 112 tally. Latin then, they were the biggest winners over the weekend. They had a huge 5-15 to 112 win over Annamullen. Aaron Mulligan scored 2-4, while Dara Dempsey, Christopher Rice and Stephen McCabe all hit goals for Latin, while for Annamullen it was Cavan Sheridan who grabbed their major. So that's the opening round of the Monaghan Championship. As I said, defending champions Scottstown weren't in action, but they will be back next week as they host Clonhibbert. So that's a huge game, and I spoke to Clonhibbert manager Paul McCartan after their win over Cardiff, and we spoke about the Cardiff game, but we also looked ahead to Scottstown a bit as well. So we're going to hear from Paul now, and that'll close the show. We'll be back on Thursday. We'll have another podcast on Thursday, and of course be back every Monday with our regular review show. So thanks to Damien and thanks to Nell for jumping on board and giving us the roundup of Cavan and Donegal. And we'll hear from Paul now, and we'll be back on Thursday. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Paul, just get your reflections on the game, a 9-point win there.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be happy just with the second half where, they got through for 3 goals in that period, which put us in a wee bit of a sweat for that period of time. But yeah, listen, delighted with the win. The big thing today was just winning your home game and getting off to a good start in the championship.
I suppose those 3 goals in 2 minutes in the first half, Paul, it nearly put the game to bed, but as you say, they sort of come back into it in the second half.
Yeah, listen, they're a really top class team, and they've made big strides in this last 2-3 years, and they've a big management team, and obviously Jason McGee in there in the middle of the park as well. So they're a really tough team, and we knew what the task was going to be going into it today. So it's massive just getting the win, and 1 point, 9 points, it wouldn't have mattered. Just get the win. What
was the message at half time, Paul? Because when you're 14 points up, it can be hard to guard against that complacency, but it was just, what was the message?
Well, it was just doing the things that we were doing the first half that worked, and obviously trying to keep things tight at the back and not conceding major scores, which obviously they took on board when we conceded 3 goals. But no, listen, the boys have responded well. They're a very proud bunch of lads, and they've responded well over this last 3 weeks in the build up to this game, but as I say, we knew the task at hand today, and it doesn't get any easier with Scottstown next week, and a lot of wounded and sore players there, Yeah,
I was going to ask you about next week. I think you're away to Scottstown.
Yeah. Listen,
a game as there is.
Listen, we're just going to be a bit thin on the deck next week, but and that's why today was so important for us that we got 2 points on the board, because it's the group of death. But with a young minor starting, making his championship debut today, and Charlie Moan, and that's great for the club. And them seeing development and youth coming through, and that's what the club needs.
And he kicked a point as well.
Yeah, he did. Oh, listen, he's a good lad, and the club need that. You know, they need the next batch of players coming through. You know, and so we're just delighted to get the win. That was the big thing.
And you were talking about a lot of wounded bodies there. Hughes looks like I'm not sure.
Yeah, listen, we'll just reassess during the week and see where we are. And it's really at this stage with us. It's just getting them ready for next week. And you know, we won't get a lot of work done. We have a 6-day turnaround, and obviously Scottstown have been sort of watching today, and they'll be ready for us next week. You know, so we know the task. Listen, they haven't won as many county titles as they have. They're taking things for granted, and they know that you know, there's a lot of teams in Monaghan trying to get that wee bit closer to them, but they're a juggernaut, and that's you know, so we're well aware of the task.